Michael had just moved into an old apartment in the city center. The house, built at the beginning of the last century, held a history within itself. High ceilings, massive wooden doors, and cracked plaster on the walls reminded of times long gone. The apartment was spacious but neglected, in need of repair, which Michael decided to do himself. On the very first day, he felt a strange atmosphere. The silence in the apartment was special, heavy, as if the house had absorbed years of loneliness and abandonment. It seemed that laughter had never been heard here. The windows were never opened, and the walls kept other people's secrets. On the third day, while tearing off old wallpaper in the living room, Michael noticed something strange. Smooth contours resembling a door appeared under the layers of paper. This was illogical. The apartment was on the top floor, and behind this wall there should have been nothing but brickwork and attic space. Curiosity immediately got the better of him. Michael carefully removed the remains of the wallpaper, and the outline became clearer. The door was walled up with a thin layer of plaster, and wallpaper was pasted over it. Its shape was narrow, tall, as if it was meant not for a person, but for something thinner and longer. Around the door, the wood was darkened, covered with a strange coating reminiscent of mold. Michael noticed that strange symbols were carved into the old wood, which seemed ancient. These patterns, curved lines, and circles looked like something more than just decoration. For a moment he felt as if someone was behind the door. The air became heavy, and in the silence of the apartment he caught a faint, barely audible sound, as if someone was whispering. Michael tried to convince himself that it was just his imagination. He loved old houses, their hidden secrets, and perhaps the door led to an attic or a forgotten room. "It's just a door," he told himself. But his hands shook as he began scraping away the plaster. It took him hours to strip the door. The paint had long since peeled away, the metal of the handle darkened with age. Its surface was cold to the touch, as if the door did not belong in this house. It was dark by the time he finished. The lamplight cast strange shadows, and the door now seemed ominous. Its carved symbols seemed to come alive in the dim light, the lines seeming to move. Michael felt a chill wash over him. It was not the cold of the room, but something else, something that penetrated deeper into his very soul. He hesitated. Everything in him screamed that this door was best left closed. But something inside him, curiosity, a thirst for a secret, a desire to explore the unknown, made him reach for the handle. The handle gave way with a hoarse scraping sound, and the door opened. There was darkness behind her. When Michael opened the door, darkness opened up before him, thick and viscous, as if it were not just darkness, but something alive. He stepped inside slowly, feeling the air around him grow colder. His footsteps echoed muffledly, as if he had crossed the boundary of the real world. He expected to see an attic or a forgotten room behind the door, but what appeared before him made him stop. In front of him was an apartment. His apartment. An exact copy, but with one important difference. Everything inside looked abandoned, as if no one had entered it for decades. The furniture was covered in a thick layer of dust, the wallpaper was peeling in places, the wooden floor was cracked, there was a faint smell of damp and decay in the air, and shadows stood in the corners of the room. They were strange, deep and dense, as if they could not be explained by a simple lack of light. Michael felt these shadows watching him, moving, subtly changing shape when he looked away. The strange feeling of presence grew stronger with every step. In the kitchen, he saw a broken stool, similar to the one he had recently fixed in his apartment. On the table lay objects identical to those in his own apartment, his favorite mug with a crack on the handle, abandoned keys. Michael thought, his heart beating faster and faster. He approached the mirror in the hallway and froze. The mirror, although covered in a layer of dirt, still reflected something strange. In the reflection, he saw not only himself, but also the shadows behind him. They looked clearer than they should have, as if they were more than just a background. He thought he saw one of them move slightly. His old lamp stood in the living room, but its shade was torn and wires hung from under it. The book he had read the night before lay open on the floor, on the same page. But the letters were strange, not like the ones he had read. The longer he stayed in this apartment, the more he felt that it was alive. Time in this place was not just frozen, it moved differently, trembling and distorting. A painting on the wall caught his attention. It was a copy of the one he had at home, but instead of the familiar landscape, it depicted something dark and frightening. Figures writhing in the unknown, as if trying to break out. At some point he heard a sound. It was a light whisper coming from the far room. The whisper was quiet, barely audible, but the words seemed to call his name. Michael approached the door leading to the bedroom. Its handle was cold, almost icy. It was darker behind the door than in the rest of this strange apartment. He took a step inside. The bedroom was empty, but his jacket, which he hadn't been able to find for the last few days, was lying on the bed. How could it have ended up here? The shadows in the corners of the room grew thicker, as if they were gathering, watching his every move. The whispers stopped, but Michael knew he wasn't alone. Michael had no memory of how long he had been in this strange, abandoned copy of his apartment. Clocks, if they existed here at all, seemed useless. Time flowed differently. Day and night merged into one viscous darkness, in which the shadows grew denser, more alive. He made every attempt to return to his apartment with despair. As soon as he left this gloomy copy, through the same door through which he had entered, he found himself again in the same place. His apartment, as he had known it, seemed only a memory. The door leading to his real world no longer opened. Each time he pushed it, he heard only a dull, suffocating creak, as if the house were mocking his efforts. He noticed how the shadows around him were becoming bolder. They no longer hid in corners, but came closer, watching him, almost touching him as he fell asleep. In their whispers, he could hear words that he was beginning to understand. "You are one of us now." One day, Michael woke up and discovered that the apartment had changed. The furniture was out of place, the objects from his home were gone, and in their place were things he had never seen before. Children's toys, old photographs of strangers covered in dust. On the wall where the landscape painting used to hang, there was now a new image, his own face distorted with horror. The eyes in the portrait moved, following him. But the most frightening thing was that his apartment, the real one, no longer existed. When he reached the window, he saw that there was no familiar city behind it. There was only endless darkness, thick, alive, the same as the shadows inside the apartment. He realized that now he was locked in this place forever. Michael screamed, banged on the walls, tried to break the glass in the windows, but the apartment remained impenetrable. She lived her life, changing around him, consuming his mind, and leaving less and less room for the memories of what had once been his home. The whispers of the shadows grew louder until they filled the entire space. One day, passing by the mirror in the hallway, Michael caught sight of his reflection. But it was not him. His face was pale, empty, and his eyes were black, like the shadows that haunted him. He realized, now he himself had become a part of this apartment, another shadow in its gloomy walls, watching who would become next.